On December 30, 2016, a group of hunters was wandering along the roads in western Belgium when they happened upon a roadside pile of trash containing a charred, blackened object. A few members of the group wanted to approach it for a closer look, but others held them back, thinking it might just be an abandoned animal carcass. So the group decided to ignore it and continued on their way. However, strangely, from the moment they got home until the next morning, December 31st, one member of the hunting team contacted the others, feeling uneasy about the dark object. He noticed that the stench did not resemble any animal corpse he had ever smelled, and he realized that the body could be linked to a serious crime they had inadvertently overlooked. Unable to sit idle and speculate, the group eventually decided to call the police. Investigators arrived on the quiet road within a few hours of the report, examined the foul-smelling trash, and confirmed that what the hunters had seen was indeed a human body. From the initial investigation, the police observed that the victim's body and face were so severely burned that she was nearly unrecognizable. However, based on the proportions of the body, they could confirm the victim was female. Her arms and legs were largely intact. Her toenails still showed a glittery color, suggesting she may have taken care of herself or visited a nail salon shortly before her death. This indicated that the victim had the time or resources to maintain her appearance, potentially a routine that occurred in the days or weeks leading up to her passing. The victim was almost unclothed, and no lighters or flammable materials were found nearby, ruling out the possibility of self-immolation. Therefore, the police had reason to consider the case suspicious rather than a suicide. Still, the initial information was insufficient to solve the case, so they called in the forensic team to take the body for detailed examination. Thanks to advanced technology, within just 2 days, by January 2, 2017, the forensic team, after thorough analysis, reported the following. First, the victim was estimated to be between 18 and 25 years old. Second, she was certainly an Asian woman. Based on 3 indicators, she was petite compared to women from other regions, around 145 to 150 meters tall. The label on her t-shirt was intact, a brand called Masikinuo sold only in Asia, and the shape of her skull confirmed her Asian origin. Third, one detail from her body suggested she may have suffered malnutrition as a child. The police speculated that she was likely an Asian-born child who had minor illnesses and was later adopted by a family in Belgium. Fourth, another plausible clue besides a necklace around her neck. The forensic team found a citizen watch made in Japan on her wrist. Belgian police officer Laurent Libert, upon contacting the manufacturer, learned that this watch model was only sold in Japan starting January 2016. Although the police initially suspected she might have been a Japanese tourist, they could not rule out the possibility that she had bought or received the watch from someone else. This made the origin of the watch only a small clue in the overall picture of the victim's identity. More concrete evidence was needed to confirm it, rather than relying on this single item. The police continued to investigate other factors to get closer to solving the case. However, the subsequent investigation truly left Belgian authorities increasingly frustrated and at a dead end. First, although the police contacted all Asian embassies in Belgium, not a single one reported a missing citizen. The investigation even shifted to immigration offices and refugee centers to gather information, but disappointment only deepened into despair. At both places, no clues were found. Next, when the police conducted interviews and asked local residents, no one knew about an Asian woman matching the previously analyzed description. Then the police recalled the detail of the foot painted with silver nail polish, a potentially important clue. Officers were sent to nail salons to show the victim's foot to owners and staff. However, due to the high number of clients, the staff could not remember if anyone had requested glittery nail polish, let alone recall the identity of the customer who chose that color. Third, in this uncertain situation, one officer hypothesized that the area, known for numerous mushroom farms where business owners often hired Asian immigrants, might yield important leads. Consequently, the police continued questioning Asian workers in surrounding mushroom farming areas. Yet once again, no clues were uncovered. Finally, the police visited Asian brothels and restaurants, but no one reported any missing women. Fifth, even when the victim's DNA was extracted, ironically, It could not be immediately compared. Belgium did not have a DNA database for Asians. DNA samples had to be sent to the Asian countries' embassies in Belgium. But after the long wait, the results once again disappointed the police. While the police tirelessly searched for clues, forensic staff examined the victim's burned body again. They discovered burned newspapers beneath the body. Fortunately, some papers were not completely destroyed. One newspaper dated November 21, 2016, leading to the hypothesis that the time of death may have been on that day or earlier. To support this hypothesis, they analyzed the maggots and larvae on the body. By studying insect development stages and environmental conditions, forensic experts could determine the exact time of death. The result, the larvae development matched the hypothesized date of death, based on the newspaper confirming that the victim died on or before November 21, 2016. Despite these clues, the victim's identity remained unknown. The police, based on skeletal descriptions and related details, created a facial reconstruction and disseminated it throughout Belgium, urging the public to report if they had seen this woman or anyone accompanying her before November 21st. Shortly after, a local resident reported that around the time of the crime, he saw a man jogging with an Asian woman. The man named Philot was also a local resident. Philot fit many criteria provided by the police: knowledge of the crime area, a penchant for burning wood, and preference for Asian women. The informant also mentioned that Philot had lived with a Thai girlfriend and her daughter. But after the incident, Philot and the Thai girlfriend and her daughter had disappeared. The police immediately obtained a warrant and searched Philot's home, but no blood or DNA related to the victim was found. Investigators speculated that the man may have committed the crime elsewhere. They quickly informed Thai police to accelerate the search. Shortly afterward, they received confirmation that Philot's girlfriend and her daughter were alive and vacationing in Thailand. Ultimately, the case of the partially burned girl reached a dead end. On January 1, 2018, a missing person announcement was again broadcast throughout Belgium. Over the next 2-3 months, investigators gradually shifted to other cases, and the trail of leads surrounding this case dwindled into a dead end. At first, everything seemed like it would end in uncertainty until August 13, 2018, when the matter unexpectedly opened up. The Vietnamese embassy in Belgium contacted the Brussels police station, revealing the first crucial lead. The embassy explained that a month earlier they had received a submission from the Belgian embassy in Hanoi from a man named Nguyen Xuan Duc from Bac Ninh, Vietnam. He was seeking help because he had lost contact with his daughter Nguyen Thi Xuan, 28, since November 21, 2016. Mr. Duc explained that he and his wife had 6 children, and since Xuan was the most academically talented among them, they had invested all their efforts into her education, even taking on loans to allow her the opportunity to study in Japan. While in Japan, Xuan not only studied diligently, but also worked multiple part-time jobs to cover living expenses. This further deepened her family's love and expectations. Daily check-in calls had been routine. However, one day, 2 years prior, the family suddenly lost all contact with Xuan. Her parents, worried, reported the situation to the Vietnamese authorities. The information the family could provide at that time included that Xuan had sent her parents a photo of a Belgian man introducing him as her boyfriend. She also shared details about him, including that they had met through a dating app. Later, he visited her in Japan, and even after leaving, he continued the relationship with Xuan. This presented a difficult situation for the police, as Xuan was in Japan, limiting the Vietnamese authorities' ability to investigate thoroughly. They could only speculate that Xuan might have temporarily moved to Belgium to live with her boyfriend, ending their investigation there. Feeling helpless, Xuan's father pleaded for her return on Facebook, hoping to find her. Unfortunately, there was no hope, even a faint one. With no other suspects besides the Belgian man Xuan had mentioned, Mr. Duc sent a submission to the Belgian embassy in Vietnam, including the personal documents of a Belgian man provided by a friend of Xuan's from Japan, suggesting that Xuan might have gone to Belgium with this man. The Belgian embassy in Vietnam immediately forwarded all information to the Vietnamese embassy in Belgium for assistance. The Vietnamese embassy in Belgium, already aware for 2 years of a burned Asian woman's body found along a trail near the small village of Geluveld, sensed a possible connection and reported it to the Belgian police. The authorities sent investigators to Xuan's family in Bac Ninh to collect DNA samples and bring them to Belgium for comparison. Finally, a shocking but painful revelation hit the family, who had spent years desperately searching for their daughter. The burned body discovered years earlier was confirmed to be that of 28-year-old Nguyen Thi Xuan. The Belgian police immediately identified Xuan's boyfriend, mentioned by Mr. Duke, as the prime suspect for investigation. His name was John van Duleg, 29, living in Zonnebeke, about 15 kilometers from where the victim's body was found. He lived there with his fiancée, whom he was about to marry in a few days, and their 2-year-old son, born on October 27, 2016, just 1 month before Xuan's murder. John worked as an electrician for a hydraulic pressing company, frequently traveling abroad, including to Japan. At the time the police began their investigation, John's wedding with his fiancée was only a few days away. To avoid alarming the family while the arrest was still uncertain, on November 8, 2018, the police decided to detain John using a fake DUI checkpoint near his home. What surprised the police was that John showed no shock at being arrested. He remained confident. Initially, John admitted to knowing Xuan, but denied any involvement in the case. However, when the police continued to interrogate him with over 9,000 intimate messages between him and Xuan found on his 2 mobile devices, after 2.5 hours, John finally confessed. He admitted to meeting Xuan during a business trip. At first, their conversations were normal about hobbies, but eventually shifted into romantic matters. Soon after, they began a consensual physical relationship, even after John returned to Belgium from his trip. During the time his wife gave birth to their son, John continued secretly texting Xuan. Naturally, he completely concealed the existence of his family in Belgium, persistently luring Xuan to believe they were in a serious romantic relationship. However, for John, Xuan had always been a fleeting pleasure. As his family life with his fiancée grew stronger, John began to fear that if Xuan discovered his true identity, his marriage would collapse. Eventually, after much consideration, John decided to lure Xuan to Belgium with the plan to kill her to protect his family's happiness. From there, John began convincing Xuan to come to Belgium, and whenever she hesitated, he persuaded her by suggesting they should have a child together, painting a picture of future happiness. Surprisingly, John did not pay for her plane tickets. Xuan, deeply in love with John, borrowed money from friends to buy a ticket to visit him. In November 2016, Xuan began her journey to Belgium. Her first stop was Helsinki, Finland, where she took a flight to Amsterdam, Netherlands, then a train to Kortrijk, Belgium. Upon arriving at Kortrijk station, Xuan got into John's car. While John was driving, Xuan took his phone to play with. At that moment, John suddenly admitted he had a wife and a son, and asked Xuan not to take any photos or videos while in Belgium. Needless to say, Xuan felt betrayed. She slapped John and declared she would expose his infidelity. Upon hearing this, John became furious, lost control, and immediately remembered the plan he had previously devised. He attacked Xuan, rendering her unconscious in under 30 seconds. Then John calmly drove to a secluded location and suffocated Xuan to death. Only 22 minutes had passed since Xuan set foot in Belgium. John admitted that after placing her lifeless body in the car, he intended to drive home, hoping his fiancée would not be there. However, she was already home early. When he attempted to move Xuan's body, he noticed his fiancée lowering the curtains to watch TV, unaware of his presence. Feeling safe, John took a plastic container and gasoline from the shed, then drove to a remote location where Xuan's body would later be found. Once there, he placed Xuan in the container, poured gasoline, set it on fire with newspaper, and left immediately as the flames rose. When asked about her personal belongings, John admitted he threw Xuan's handbag and backpack into a canal on the way back, while her phone and tablet were hidden under the bathtub. After collecting John's statement, the police immediately searched his home. As he said, Xuan's phone and tablet were found under the bathtub. At that moment, John's fiancée saw the case files in the hands of the police documenting the murder. Shockingly, she initially thought that John himself had been the victim. Faced with this situation, the police had no choice but to inform her that her fiancé was in fact the perpetrator. A few days after confessing, John claimed that he had an affair with Xuan because his fiancée could not satisfy him. He said that if his fiancée had fulfilled his needs, he would not have been unfaithful to Xuan. By saying this, he wanted to suggest that his fiancée bore some responsibility as well. It became clear how John's fiancée truly felt. Initially, she had tried to support him, but after hearing these cold-hearted words, she completely cut off all contact with John. The trial began on January 8, 2021, 4 years after the crime. There, John surprised both the police and the prosecutors by completely changing his testimony compared to what he had said during interrogation. Specifically, he claimed to be a good man and insisted that he had invited Xuan to Belgium for fun, not to harm her. All of this was meant to prove that the crime was unplanned, a mistake, rather than a deliberate act. Given the testimony and witnesses, the jury had to consider whether John had planned the crime from the beginning or if it was a sudden act of anger. Ultimately, the jury confirmed that Xuan had been lured to Belgium, but since the crime occurred unexpectedly and John had not prepared tools to dispose of the body from the start, it could only be considered a spontaneous act. On January 14th, the jury declared John guilty, but concluded that the crime was not premeditated. The next day, on January 15th, 2021, John was sentenced to 27 years in prison with eligibility for early parole in November 2027. This sentence was 1 year lighter than what the prosecutors had requested. When the sentence was announced, a heavy atmosphere filled the courtroom. Xuan's family stood in a corner, unable to hold back their tears. They had imagined the day justice would be served, but now the harsh reality struck. 27 years in prison seemed too light for the unending pain John had caused them. They felt as if a part of their souls had been stolen, and in their hearts remained a persistent, painful question. Will there ever come a day when they no longer mourn Xuan, and the dreams she was robbed of will not haunt them forever?